should get started. As um, as I said, I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission, and I'm gonna leave it to somebody else to go around the table because I can't quite see the whole table. So
I can start. I'm Angie Brewer. I've been on the commission for a little over a year. My day job is working for the Department of Environmental Protection.
Josh Franklin, I'm the town planner. I'm just chairing the committee.
Chris Lionel, a member of the Conservation Commission. I'm I think the freshman member of the committee here. I've been on less than a year, I guess. You've been on for a year, so.
But you re-upped after.
I have been on the commission 10 plus years ago for quite a while, serving with Victor and others. So, yes, Chris Lionel.
Ed Friedman, Chair of Friends of Miramichi Bay. Recognize your name. Used to be a Friends of Miramichi Bay member about 20 years ago.
I was for a while, yeah. Yes, I was.
I'm John Lichter. I'm a retired Bowdoin ecologist, and I've worked on the river for about 20 years. So, including the dam and fish counts there at the dam with Friends of Miramichi Bay. Shannon invited me to come.
I'm Shana Stewart Deeds. I am the secretary on the Conservation Commission.
I'm Pam Belford. I'm a member of the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, and I am their liaison to the Conservation Committee.
My name is Jeff Bush. I'm a former president of the Miramichi Bay chapter of Trout Unlimited, and current Conservation Committee member
in Brunswick.
I live in Brunswick.
And on the Conservation Committee in Brunswick, right? Or
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Chip Spees. I'm going to be doing the presentation. I'll say a little bit more about myself when I start.
I have to, don't I?
Yeah.
My name is Chuck Farrell. We moved into Topsham about 6 months ago. Happy to be here. 20 plus years up in New Harbor. And while up there, I was involved in various conservation and other nonprofit things, and trying to get an understanding of Topsham and what the opportunities might be for me to help do something.
Awesome, great.
okay.
Back to you, Vic.
That's it.
Yes. I guess we should take care of a little business. Anybody want to make a motion to approve or discuss last month's minutes? I guess we make a motion first. Excuse me. Make a motion to accept last month's minutes and then any discussion. Sorry.
I'll move to accept the minutes from the February 3rd, 2025 meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion or no? All in favor? Okay. So
And pass, Victor. I don't know if you can see us.
yes, yeah, yeah, I got the hands. So I guess we'll turn it over to Chip to give us a presentation on why we should be concerned about the dam relicensing.
Okay, great.
Chip, can you just hold 2 seconds?
Sure.
We're trying to get, I think Audie's trying
Yeah,
to.
Audie's
Yeah.
Our 5th member is trying to join, so you just give us a second to see if she can get here.
Oh, she's calling me. Hello? Hi. I think, yeah, go ahead. Oh, it wasn't in the emails. If you go to the Topsham website and look up Conservation Commission meetings.
Send her the link directly.
Couldn't get ready to come tonight.
See that? Yeah. And then Josh will have to add you as a panelist once you get in. Okay.
He's been
Okay,
trying
sure.
to make these. I'm not sure what happened.
I just got an email from him today, the TU email.
Right.
Yeah, about the meeting at the.
Yeah, he came to an earlier one with Mark.
Because he lives in Topsham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, attending.
Okay.
Audie, can you hear us? You're muted.
You're muted. Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
You just missed introductions.
Sorry, the first day back after a week of vacation, I worked right up to this and I thought I had an email. So, hi, I'm Audie Arbo.
Okay, great.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could put up the slides, that'd be great. While he's doing that, I just want to thank everybody who's here tonight and for this opportunity to talk about what I find to be a very important issue and a long-standing one, literally over 200 years. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. I said I'd mention a little bit more about myself. I live in Brunswick now, across the river, below the head of tide. I have lived there for about 7 years, but raised my family in Topsham, out on the Cathants Road, just before you get to the Bodenham line. If any of you know Jim Lentz, who we were neighbors, and our kids went to all of the Topsham schools, and my wife, until this summer, worked in the health department at Williams Cone. So we've had deep roots in Topsham and had a great experience living here. And then once the kids all left, we decided we just didn't want to mow the lawns and shear their Christmas trees. They come home for a week every summer and moved a little closer to town. But I feel like it doesn't matter what side of the river you're on, and I'm part of both communities at this point. So I helped with Ed's help and John's help and Jeff's help and others form the Free the Andro Coalition, which is made up of Maine Rivers, Mary Meeting Bay, Trout Unlimited, and American Rivers, and we're looking for more members because I became more and more aware of this issue. So if we could look at the next slide, please. So I'm gonna also present on Thursday night to the select board, and I have a slightly shorter presentation for that, but since I was told we had some time tonight, I'm not going to take a lot of time, but 15 minutes or so and talk about things. Okay. So yeah, we'll cover a couple different areas and try and weave the thoughts together about this public resource, this fantastic public resource that we have, and how it can be used for multiple uses well beyond producing power and expanding other uses like fishing and that kind of thing. Next slide, please. So it's Maine's third largest river, the Androscoggin. It's 178 miles long. It's been valued by humans for, this is interesting, my pointer doesn't show up on there. Forget it. It's been valued by humans for.
You can stand up if you want.
But initially there were some issues around dams with blocking the river, but then really it's with the Industrial Revolution, the river took a beating in terms of pollution that also reduced fish populations. But the good news is that the Clean Water Act has worked very well. And in 2023, this stretch of the river was upgraded from water quality from a Class C to a Class B. And I have to hand it to Friends of Mary Meeting Bay. They've did over 20 years, I think, of water sampling. And those data showed that the river had actually cleaned itself up and deserved that credit and that rating. And that rating is a vote by the Maine legislature. It's not like your boss at DEP making a decision, and they have to ultimately approve it. And we also went to hearings around that. But it's really a statement or a testament, I should say, to the Clean Water Act and how it's helped things improve. So what's the next step, or what's another step to build on this wonderful recovery? And that's what we'd like to talk about tonight. So once it was a clean source of water, this is a view of Topsham from Water Street in Brunswick. Ice harvesting, so people were very comfortable pulling ice out and using it for whatever uses. But when you're harvesting ice, it's ultimately gonna end up touching people or even being consumed by them. Next slide. And today is a big, beautiful river, and it's returning. And these are just pictures that I took just walking down along Pinette's Landing and upstream. Right now, you see the smell camps down below the bridge. That beaver was right at Pinette's Landing. I snuck up on him in the spring, and I also found out I owned some property along the river, and I was trying to reduce shoreline erosion. I put in a lot of pussy willows and discovered that beaver just love pussy willows. So I switched over to some dogwood species that they don't like as much because they just kept mowing them down. That little guy in the middle there, that critter, they're starting to appear now along the river. They're called winter stoneflies, and they come up through the ice now. And I checked the other day, I didn't see them, but they could have been here today for all I know. And they're an indicator of a healthy system. So an indicator species, if you will. And it's really nice to see those down on the bottom of the river. Next slide. A little bit of history. Explorers have been here since the 1600s, or I should say entrepreneurs and people creating businesses as early as the 1600s, with fish processing and shipbuilding, and then ultimately mills. By the early 1800s, the mills had really done damage to the fish runs because we as humans were able to build dams that could literally cross the entire river. And that's what blocked the migratory fish. And I'm just going to take a quick step back. Why is it important to think about migratory fish? And what is a migratory fish? Well, these are fish that either run in from the ocean to spawn, or they may go back out to the ocean to spawn, like the American eel. And they can't complete their life cycle without being in both ocean, saltwater and freshwater. They're important for a lot of reasons, but when you stop them at a certain point, then that really knocks down their populations. And it's not only important for, say, someone who is very interested in ecology and fishing like I am, but it's also important for our commercial fishing industries and our communities along our coast. As early as 1880, the federal government had recognized that there was a major drop in nearshore cod fisheries. And this was attributed to loss of these populations of what are called river herring and shad. And John has done a lot of work with a gentleman named Ted Ames on this. And they found very clear evidence that there was a lot of fishing going on, but a big contributor to the reduction in the stock was the fact that all of this food that came downstream in the fall as young of the year, or those fish that were schooling up, getting ready to go upstream in the spring, were major food sources for cod and other fish. And once those stopped and their populations were reduced tremendously, same thing happened to the cod. And John, you can, or any of you guys, step in whenever you've all done work on this. So at head of tide in Brunswick, the Brunswick Topsham Dam, also that was known as Brunswick Falls at one point. That's the first barrier to migratory fish. So next slide. This is just another look at people having fun on the river. This is again looking up towards Topsham from Brunswick when we had a lot of ice, maybe like this winter, which was probably one of the best ice winters we've had in a little while. But it was important enough that people actually built that slide, ran power out to an ice rink. They were having a great time on the river. Next slide. This is actually a power plant that was built on Shad Island, which we'll get another look at with the current dam configuration. This walkway is running back towards Brunswick side of the river, right below Fort Andros, probably right where the Green Bridge starts right now, just about there. And it was the first hydro plant built. I think the production was something like the same production. I used to know the number and I should know it now, but if you think of an SUV and how much electricity that produces, that's about what this dam produced at the time, but that was a big deal back then. The builder was warned that this is going to be subject to flooding and we don't think you're going to be here very long. And he went ahead and built it in 1892. And this all went away in 1927 when there was a spring flood. And so you can kind of get a sense of the age of certain photos by seeing this thing either there or not there.
So, question. Are we looking at, is this the island with ice or something on it, or is that a dam?
I don't know if that's a dam.
It looks to me like that's sort of the same look as Shad Island there.
Yeah, that is Shad Island, but I'm not sure what the configuration. When they built the new dam back in 79 to 83, there was a lot of blasting, I'm sure. So that might have been part of the falls or a human structure. It looks like there was water flowing over and freezing. Next slide.
Just want to check in really quick. Victor and Audie, are you guys seeing the presentation? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear
Yes,
us?
sorry, I was thumbs up. Yes, we
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, it was hidden as a little tiny window on my screen. I finally found it.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. And this is pre-1927. As I said, you can see the power plant over there, but there's also a fishway on the Topsham side, and there's a figure of a human down below, so it's fairly large, but people were aware, and they were trying to help fish get up over the dam. I'm sure with mixed results and not usually positive, but there was a fishway there back in 1927 or before 1927.
So we could see a little bit of them.
You want to go back?
Yeah.
Yeah, very smooth. That had been constructed, and they were saying, well, if we put this granite, fish ponds on the right, then maybe they can work their way up. All right, next slide. So these are the diademous or migratory fish that utilize the river historically and even today. So the sturgeon and the smelt and the tomcod, they got up as far as Brunswick Falls. So the dam isn't technically impeding them. And I wanted to be clear about that. Not all the fish went up, like a salmon up over those falls, but quite a few do. Alewives, blueback herring, I'll refer to as river herring when we go forward because they're very hard to separate visually as they're moving through the water. Shad went up and over, striped bass and sea lamprey all the way up to as far as Lewiston and Little Androscoggin River and up through the Little Androscoggin. And then Atlantic salmon went up over all the way as far as Rumford. And the American eel is really an amazing animal. They go back out to the ocean to breed. And when they go upstream, the dams do impair them. There's no question about it, but they are also able to travel over land when it's very wet and damp and the conditions are right and the slopes aren't too high. They do try and utilize the dams, and those are one of the things that will be studied around this dam. But it's pretty amazing where they go, and they can be found almost anywhere in Maine. Okay, next slide. So here's the current configuration. And this is looking from the Topsham side. Shad Island was where that power plant was, no longer there. And the dam is, much bigger than it was before. And this was built, as I said, 1979 to 83. At the far end of the picture on the left, you can see that kind of sloping up and down. That's the fishway, the upstream passage. And then there's a downstream passage that comes out of the power plant, which I'll show you on the next slide. So here's another look at the fishway and the upstream passage on the left. And then you can see a foamy water, a pipe coming out at the bottom of that power plant structure. That's an 18-inch pipe. That's the downstream fish passage. So when the young of the year are coming downstream, or shad or alewives that have spawned are coming downstream, they need to find what's called an attraction flow above the power plant and then that 18-inch pipe to be most successful in passing downstream. And there's a lot of evidence that very often they don't. They end up going down through the turbines. Sometimes if there's high water, they go over the spillway that's off to the right. But when they go down through the turbines, the technical term is like impingement, and there might be another one, but really it's not a good thing. It's basically they get torn up in the turbines. When I first moved to Water Street, one morning, there were seagulls everywhere, and it was like in October, and wow, this is just amazing. We went down, and there were all these little quarter-size alewives with slices in them that had pulsed through in one night, and just really took a beating. And I suspect at the time, FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which we'll go into in a minute, said this was a singular event, a one-time event. And I think the reason it was noticed was because there were so many, and it had to do with Sabattis Lake, and they lowered the dam and a bunch of fish came through. But very often they're coming through in smaller groups. And I think what happens very often that we're just not aware of, and this is just me surmising, is that fish are going through those turbines, getting chopped up, but we never see them because the predators are going to grab them, and there's just not enough for a human along the shoreline to get to see that kind of evidence. So I believe it does happen quite frequently, and it's not a limited one-time event. Okay, so next slide, please. This is, if you've ever taken time to go to the Fishway, it's fascinating to see that. It's open from May and June. And you can walk down in and look at this glass to see the river herring coming up. So this might be both alewives and blueback herring. John might be able to tell you if he looks at them, but I certainly can't.
They always have bigger eyes.
Bigger
like
eyes.
Noticeably bigger.
Oh, yeah. So 7 of those are alewives and 3 are, no. When they're counting the fish, they tend to group them together because they're very hard to describe. But if you've been working on the river for 20 years, they probably look quite, obvious to you. So I used to think this is abundance. This is amazing. Look at all these fish coming through here, but looks are deceiving. So if we could go to the next slide, please. These are data that are provided by the Department of Marine Resources. I haven't updated them in a few years since 2021, but it really doesn't matter because the data, the trend of the data is the same. So at the very top, by potential, this is based on a report by the Department of Marine Resources that came out. And they looked at the potential for river herring production, shad, and salmon in the river if the original spawning grounds could be reached. And these are actual adults entering the Fishway, these numbers. So while you might see, behind the glass, literally thousands of river herring, and as many as 179, you'll see on the next slide, but don't change it just yet, that the average is much lower than that, and usually even less than a couple % of what the potential is for all these species. Even in the highest years, it never got above 5%.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you're saying, and to be clear, that's entering the Fishway, not necessarily going all the way through.
Oh, that's true.
Is what that's what you said anyway. That's what it says there. I thought they usually are counting.
Yeah, I don't.
When they pass through the window and the trap.
Yeah, I think it is at the trap. Maybe my terminology is wrong.
So they're at the top.
Yeah, they're at the top.
They're through. But a lot of fish it takes 2 days for herring to get through that Fishway.
Mhm.
A lot of fish will not make it up that, so they may enter it. That's why I just want to make that distinction.
Yeah, what Ed's referring to is the Atlantic salmon. The longer they spend to get up above, they burn calories because they're not feeding Atlantic salmon, or at least aren't feeding as they move up the river. And they may get above a dam or two and then not have enough caloric capacity to actually produce eggs. And then they basically have to go back out to sea and try again. So delays are an issue as well as direct obstruction. So the point here being that the actual numbers going through, while they might look impressive, they are much smaller than potential. And the work that John and Ed do with sonar has shown as many as 10,000 American shad below the dam, and some estimates are higher, on a given tide right below the dam. And in some years, I think it was last year or the year before, 14 made it through. And last year it was, I think, 70 or something. 91. Yeah,
Last year,
91.
I was like 13 the year before.
Yeah, 13 the year before. So you've got 10,000 fish teeing up there and not able to get above. The striped bass love that because there's an incredible food source that's stuck in front of them. And if you are on the Green Bridge in May, the seagulls and the cormorants and everything is there at that big bottleneck consuming fish. Next slide, please. And this is a slide that John did based on data that he was able to collect, the Fishway data that I just showed you, as well as what happened in Damariscotta and then on the Sebascook River. Damariscotta was impacted by the removal, ultimately, I think, of the Edwards Dam and some other barriers on the Edwards Dam and some other barriers on the.
Sebascook.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sebascook, yeah. And Damariscotta was an improved fishway there. And I think the Edwards Dam was done in 2004 or something along those lines. And you can see what happened to the populations.
So the top one, the Sebascook, 2 dams were removed and 3 fish lifts were put on the remaining dams. So fish lift is just like it sounds like, it's like an elevator for fish. And there's big lakes on the Sebascook. So there's a lot of spawning habitat there. Damariscotta is one lake. and they pass 1 million on average. Okay, so there's 1 million fish getting up a channel the size of this, the width of this table. Okay, we got the 3rd largest river in Maine out here, right? And we're getting nowhere close to Damascus
Right.
with one life on it.
Nowhere close, very steady and stable. That line is, depends on what your precision levels are, but that's a flat line.
For the other rivers, the Damascus, Mills and Sebastopol, is there data on the amount of fish in the river below the dam compared to the Androscoggin? Because that, I can see that would be a question saying, well, these other places are more attractive to fish than the Androscoggin is. I'm not saying that, but what's there and what percentage getting up above at each river? Because this is a pretty powerful graphic right here.
Right.
So
that's what's passing.
Yeah.
There's been numerous estimates of the potential, like if the dams weren't there,
Sure.
like there were papers from, estimating what it was like in 1600.
Sure.
And the DMR do this sort of thing a lot. And so there's more, so it's basically based on lake area and stream for the river, the blueback herring spawn in the rivers. It's slow parts of the river. So it's just basically, you can do it with a map and calculate the area.
Yeah. And I think, the last slide did show the potential based on those studies that John mentioned.
Yeah, actually, there's a different figure that's, maybe it's in there somewhere, but it's just like, the amount of fish based as a proportion of the potential.
Yeah, and they use an estimated of so many fish per
Yeah,
acre.
you've got the potential up there. So I guess that's the.
So, and this is interesting, the point that you made, if you go down one slide again to John's graph, and you say, well, how many fish are out there? Well, if you look at the Sebastopol prior to the improvements around dams, you would have said, well, it looks just like the Androscoggin.
Yeah, I think that 2000 to 2005 window is pretty important.
So the indication there is that the human changes to the river are what ultimately allowed more fish to spawn and increase the populations. Great, next slide. So not in any way trying to hide the ball around energy production on the river. The dam is owned by a Canadian company, Brookfield Renewable, which is a subsidiary of Brookfield Oak Tree Partners. So in the largest private landholders in the world, different numbers you see, but around 700 billion in assets. It controls 85% of Maine's hydro facilities. It also controls gas and some solar production in Maine. This dam accounts for about 3% of Brookfield's production and 2.6% of the overall hydro production in Maine. And according to Brookfield, it produces about, on average, depends on the year, but 90,000 megawatt hours. And that's enough to service 13,000 homes. And I checked that number against the governor's website on energy, and it does check out. Average use in Maine homes is 550 kilowatt hours. And so if you do the conversions, it sounds about right. So it's an energy producer. It's not a very old dam by Maine dam standards. 50 years old is not very old. But they're selling this power on the open market, not necessarily Maine homes. It goes out to what's called ISO New England, and it's wheeled out across New England. Again, using the governor's office, energy office, I looked at the average price that people pay for supply in Maine, which is around 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So if that's what they're getting on top, on the gross revenue, this dam is generating around $9 million a year in energy production that Brookfield is then able to sell on the open market, or is receiving $9 million for its sales in the open market. Next slide. Go ahead.
Question. I'm remembering seeing a figure on yield from that dam of 19 something. What was that?
It's plated for 19 megawatts.
Okay.
So if it produced 19 megawatts every day, 365 days a year, it would be a higher number. This is, I did the math on that one. And again, I don't remember these numbers, but it's running around 70% of the time.
So that was just a per day figure that I'm remembering.
That's the legal plate based on the turbines that are in there, that if it was running optimally.
Bank full flood.
Yeah, all the
Bank
time.
full, as much water you know,
Yeah,
as it needed.
right. And no
to push
downtime.
the turbines.
I think it's running, I think around 70 or 80% efficient, something like that. So that's what this, the 90,000 is. So ecosystems are complex, and John and others in the room can tell you about that. John has a slide that will just completely put you on the floor with all the connections between animals. It's infinite. And FERC is asked to consider all these things when it's relicensing. So we're looking at history and economy and biology. We're looking at the adaptations that were made technically and biologically by the populations in the river and by the humans around it and others. And then there's regulation and who's accountable for what. So the point of this slide that I put together was just to introduce people to the complexity of what the parties have to look at as the relicensing goes forward. Next slide, please. So this is really a once in a generation opportunity. That's probably one of the most important points for people to understand. The last license was issued in 1979 for this dam, and the licenses are what drive the basic rule book for operating the dam. How do they keep the fishway open? How much energy do they produce? How do they manage their safety concerns? How do they deal with historical artifacts that might be in the area, anything like that? Once that license is issued, that's pretty much the rule book, and that's pretty much where it's going to stay unless there's something big that happens. So it's really a once in a lifetime opportunity to make a change with the current relicensing of the dam, which opened in 2024 and will take about 5 years. And at 2029, which is the 50th year, is when it technically expires. Wouldn't expect this to automatically be renewed in 2029. There may be a lot of reasons why it takes a little longer or whatever. But this is the chance now to make a difference. And a lot of the dams in the lower part of the Androscoggin were licensed around then. Some of them are further ahead, like the one in the Pejepscot Dam is closer to its terminus than this Andro Dam, than the Brunswick Dam, which just opened. And we've learned a lot in 40 years, and we've benefited in 40 years from the Clean Water Act. I would guess that in 1979 through 83, people weren't thinking that much about fish because the river was in such difficult shape. I met a woman who grew up on Mill Street on the Brunswick side. Her house isn't there anymore because when they widened Route 1, they took down her house. But she remembers as a child, she's probably in her 80s now, watching the sunsets, and everybody worked in the mill, and people would drive across the Black Bridge between Topsham and Brunswick, stop in the middle and just dump their trash in the river. That was normal behavior. And if you go downstream on Water Street, anywhere along the edge of the river, you can see that it was a major landfill for many generations down that way. And if I dig along my property, which is right near where all the smelt camps go in, if you go down like a few inches, it's all sawdust from the old ice houses that were there, because that gets anaerobic, it doesn't break down. You can still find that, even in a non-archaeologist like me can figure that one out. So the current fishways exist. You saw them, but they don't work well. And this is the first major barrier to sea run fish. So if we could go to the next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad to see that bullet about the other Andro dams as well. So it seems like they're not far behind in terms of relicensing, following.
Some of them are ahead, actually.
Okay. So do they have similar structures in terms of fish passage currently as the?
They're not all the same. They're different ages. I think Pejepscot may have a fish lift, and Arumbo has a fish passage.
Okay.
And
I'm just wondering if they're similarly ineffective upstream and also need to be addressed with.
They all need
the
to be
next
addressed. I think
relicensing.
that's a simple answer. Some may be more.
Yeah, and most of the dams, when they get relicensed, they are now writing in reserve authority for them, which would let Fish and Wildlife Service actually reopen something or make a change, but they never do. The dam owner can ask FERC to make a change, and they'll usually let the dam owner do it, but not you or I, for sure. But those are fish lifts that I think both Warumbo and Pejepscot have lifts, but they're not getting that many fish
Right.
up there because of Brunswick.
But if the Brunswick passage was improved, they would feasibly be able to use the lifts higher up.
Yeah.
And there would be more pressure for them to improve, because there is a thing that's written in that I'm told called adaptive management. And if the situation changes and there's suddenly a lot more fish piling up below the Pejepscot, then there's reasons for them to change what's happening.
They've been doing studies at the Jepstone on will shad enter the fish lift and whatnot, and they're getting kind of somewhere near the entrance, but they're not going in.
I've heard they're very skittish.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yes, and it's interesting, though, Saco River does pretty well with the fish lift for shad.
Yeah.
But not a lot of places.
This is a classic situation of one size does not fit all,
Yeah.
because different species behave differently, which is a huge challenge, these things. So the FERC relicensing, it's a heavy lift. You've got public input, which is kind of the phase we just went through in 2024, part of it, not all of it, with scoping and letting people know. And they in May had meetings where the public could attend, but to be honest, very few people read that little box and understood that that was happening. I inquired with the Brunswick town manager, and they didn't know that that was happening. And then they decided to go. And then I also talked to Mark, and he decided to go as well. So it was nice. They made the effort to get there and see about the facility and answer some questions. And we had some folks there, and Ed and others, John, Jeff, all talked. I was out of town when the actual hearing occurred. So FERC is supposed to listen to input from not only the operators of the energy facilities, but the public, and they're mandated to consider social well-being, the economics, and the ecology, or the environment, I should say. So all this gets kind of put in over the next 4 or 5 years, and coming out the other side is going to be whatever that license says. So if we could look at the next slide. And these next 2 slides are terrible, and I understand that. I'm handing this out. I'm not asking anybody to look at it or actually read these things. But my point being here is that what I'm handing out with the circle is where we are now. It's really that center column. And this is 5.5 to 5 years before the expiration of the license. As I mentioned, it goes out in 2029. And the center column is the revised study plan has been put through FERC. And this spring, they're going to start actual studies on the dam, above and below the dam, and the impoundment. And then if you go to the next slide, it looks very similar. And this is all the other elements that have to occur, the abilities for appeal, further studies, and hopefully, and I didn't give all that out. I just wanted people to be able to see where we are right now with that first one, because I knew you weren't going to be able to read all this stuff. The point is, there's a lot of steps involved, and some of them are to benefit public, to make sure the public has input, the agencies that have authority, like Department of Marine Resources, NOAA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and others. I'm forgetting, DEP. And then also we as the public have opportunities for input, and we, the Free the Andro Coalition, with comments from Mary Meeting Bay and Friends of Mary Meeting Bay, have made comments on the study plans. We've been part of meetings with discussions with the biologists from DMR and NOAA and others, and the dam owners Brookfield and their consultants about what studies are needed. Some people, some studies look really good, and others, I hear the marine resource people saying you really ought to consider this, you really ought to consider that. Some of those ideas are accepted and some not. When somewhere in here and one of these boxes, after the next couple of years, they will have data on above and below the dam, on much better data on fish movements and how the fluid dynamics of the dam work, and how that could influence fish passage. And they will take those data and do 2 things. One, they will do a multiple fishway analyses that looks at multiple options for fishways, and then they're going to do a cost-benefit analysis. So I'm happy that they separated it, in theory, at least on paper, that first they're going to do, here's what we could do with fishways to improve things, and these are the options that we can see. And then they're going to go to what's the cost benefit analysis. And that's probably where I fully expect to have some difficulty. Brookfield as a business is probably going to look at what's our least cost opportunity here. And people like me or the concerned parties are going to say, well, how are we going to get more fish up through, the most fish up through in an unfettered way? So that's probably going to be an interesting and challenging period.
Is there another comment period that occurs after those studies are released in that cost analysis?
Yes, there are comments that can go in over the next year and 2 years. Go ahead. Yeah, there's comments. from-
Almost after every phase, there's a comment period, so it does go on for long.
Hence the 5-year
Right,
period.
yeah. And you can't even sign up to be an intervener until quite a ways into the process, actually.
It's probably good.
This has been all preliminary stuff
You know,
so far, really.
then there's a certain format you have to file your comments
Right.
in. Like we were very careful to cite our references, and there's no just kind of banging on the table saying you got to do better here. You really need to have work like John's and others to show that you're making a cogent argument based on the facts and the current science that's available. Next slide. So what we're doing is just trying to get people at this point, this phase, I would call it awareness raising, and it's been great. Over in Brunswick, we met with several commissions like the Conservation Commission here and ultimately the town council, and they did pass a resolution saying that they really wanted to see improved fish passage. And that helps raise awareness. We did have an article that appeared in the Sunday Telegram just yesterday, talking about this very specific dam and a lot of the issues we talked about tonight. So people go see the fishway window and they think this is great, or they see the fishway from outside, and it's really not where it needs to be. So what we're doing is telling others. And as the FERC license process proceeds, that we're hoping to build out more members of the coalition, more public awareness, and make sure we get as many comments as possible to FERC from as many sources as possible. What we're told is they really will listen to those things. If it's under the radar and nobody really knows about this arcane process, then they really don't have to react to it. But if people are aware and they are commenting, then it makes a difference. So that's kind of where we're trying to go right now. And I'm trying to be available to answer questions and have a lot of resources and other people that can answer questions. And we're getting our legs underneath us and hopefully more structure as we go forward around how to manage our messaging and making sure that we keep people up to date. And one thing I should mention that I'm going to put in future slides if I didn't do it in this one is Bowdoin College has been very helpful. Vlad Dohufnikov over there is a professor of ecology, was in the same group as you, John.
Yeah, it's in biology.
Yeah. And he tells me, I'm not the fish guy. John is the fish guy. If you want to talk about fish, talk to John. But they're both ecologists who understand the river and work on it. And they help, they have put together with some student resources, a website that's a clearinghouse. It's meant to be a curated, neutral clearinghouse for whoever wants to put information in about this process. And if you sign up for that, then every time something's posted, you'll get a message. And so that's one thing that we need to work on building out that list. I think there's maybe 50 on it now, and it could be a whole lot bigger. You're gonna say something, John?
I have comments whenever you're done.
Okay, I think I am almost done. Hold on, if we go to one more slide. Yeah, so it's been 400 years, like I said. We were able to take tremendous advantage of the river. Native Americans for thousands of years, and then we came along and had some great and bountiful years in terms of the biology and the fish harvest and things. And what are we going to do now? What are we going to do going forward? So next to last slide, I believe this is a picture by Dr. Lichter. And I think Ed was probably there for that sturgeon as well, early in the morning doing their sonar. And it's just a fantastic shot. And I think it says so much. And then the very last slide is my contact information if you want to get a hold of me. So
Is that what they're doing when they're jumping, the sturgeon?
Trying to get a hold of.
trying to get a
get a hold
picture
of you.
taken. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, no. Does anyone know why they're jumping, why they're breaching?
No one really does know, and people have thought about sea lice off and things like that, and
Heard that.
say no. So I think it could be a mating, a courtship thing, could be for fun,
There's a lot of hypotheses.
Our office is right in the Red Mill building.
Oh, yeah.
So,
you see it.
yeah, I'm right across from you, or right across from the smelt house.
Oh, yeah.
Just about a little bit, so, yeah.
Bryce,
And that's a small one. I mean, well, I mean, it's hard to tell from the picture, but I mean, there's several
That
footers, several
wasn't
footers.
small.
That wasn't small, that was a good
That was a
one.
wide angle lens. It was quite a ways away.
Yeah, okay, all right, so that was a good one.
Bryce Muir, who was a sculptor who, died, went through the ice a number of years ago in Bowdoin, wrote a story that
The one that was
sturgeon.
was he the one that was skating?
Yes,
Yeah.
and he wrote a story about how they jumped because they were basically in love with the P3s that were around, but the Navy shut
They're
down.
they're
and
still doing,
jumping,
they're
so-
still doing it, so it must be
Yeah,
something
yeah,
else.
I know a young woman who had a close encounter. She was in a kayak
Oh, yeah.
and she was completely scared out of her core.
There's a video on YouTube, you know, how real is stuff of one that actually landed on someone's boat.
Wow.
Or it was like a pontoon boat or something.
Yeah.
And it looked like 5, 6 feet long.
My neighbors on Water Street had that happen. They have forget what it is, but you walk through the console and it jumped and landed, broke one of their windows. And they weren't sure if sturgeon bit, if they could bite you. So they were quite worried about it, but they finally wrestled it out and got it out.
So I think there's the ask is that, support from towns help in the FERC
Yes.
process. And so, I think you probably know from emails, but we'd hope that, Topsham like Brunswick would think about a resolution in support of approved fish passage.
Is that more important now than or later in the process? Or, because you
Or
could,
repeatedly.
well, that's the thing, when
Yeah.
you write a resolution, things kind of fade away, in time. If this is gonna take 4 or 5 years, how do you re-up that?
Oh, I
Or
think
what's
it's
the-
extremely important now.
Yeah.
Because it-
so-
Okay.
Sorry, but it builds a foundation.
Yeah.
That we can build on, and we know we can go out and talk about it, having informed the elected officials in the community and the people on the commission, the same thing in Brunswick, that when we go out and say something and we say, oh, the public wants to have improved fishway here, we know that those resolutions stand behind us, that we didn't just walk down.
Yeah, and as FERC folks are cogitating in their office in DC, they're gonna know that, the local communities are
Aware.
aware
If they still have their
and
job.
interested. Yeah, if they still have a job next week.
Yeah.
Audie had she had a comment.
Yeah, I was just wondering too, not that to say that, we're gonna say one way or another, but I don't know if the process might change, like with like the executive orders and stuff going on. So it is interesting to me that yes, everything's set in a certain way right now, but seems like there is a little bit of possible fluctuation in the future with how FERC relicensing might happen. It's an
All we can
interesting.
do is move forward with
concept.
the date, and we can't predict the future.
Yeah. I think you're right to have that concern. And as you said, all we can do is move forward with what we know and then react. And the more we have in terms of obvious community support and data and knowledge, the better off we're going to be. John, you've been waiting.
In December, let's see, the Citizens Climate Lobby asked me, along with the Land Trust, to talk about climate tipping points. So there was a big piece in the New York Times, and a bunch of people saw it, about tipping points of the climate system. And basically, that's nonlinear systems basically don't change linearly. They seems like nothing's happening until they pass a threshold, and then they rapidly change. And that's the climate system.
That's the hockey stick.
It's a hockey stick. It's a lot of things we're actually we are familiar with, but we don't think about it that much. So like even if we just put a piece of ice here and watched it melt and measured the temperature of the room, let's say we had the temperature of the room below 32 and we brought it up, it would pass the threshold there where all of a sudden there's enough energy in those molecules that they break apart and it melts. It's so a very simple physical system like water molecules do that. Ecosystems do that. We tend to think about change in the future as being like what we've seen in our lifetimes, which just makes sense, I guess, but that's not what the next 50 years looks like. There's no way. Okay, we're gonna have catastrophic sea level rise, for sure. A bunch of other things are possible, okay? And so I keep thinking that and I work with the land trust, Brunswick Topsham Land Trust a lot too. I'm a chair of stewardship there. And so I'm thinking a lot about, it isn't important that we just grab properties when we can and do the best we can to steward them and, the things that we have to do. We really need to think about how ecosystems function as well. Because when these big changes happen, if we need to do the best we can. The best thing we can do is really think about functioning ecosystems. Maybe they're not the same exact species as were here in 1600 and so on. Probably not. There's invasives all over the place, but we need to do the best we can with what's out there to get it functioning again. These fish were a big part of not only the river system, but the nearshore groundfish, and just about everything you can think of ate alewives. Okay, so just as an example, I did a lot of work with the cod fishermen, looking at historical data. And just as an example, though, in around 2010, I worked with students in the DMR on the bridge here at the dam. We had cameras over the side to see if underwater cameras, video cameras, to see why the shad wouldn't use the ladder. And I remember the last time I went in July to pick, the shad runs over, I went out to pick up the cameras, and I noticed that the surface of the water in the dam race there, just below the turbines and down a little bit, was just full of little juvenile alewives hitting the surface. Okay, so they're hitting the surface because there's stripers down there pinning them up against the surface. They're jumping out of the water. It'd be like waves of just little fish jumping out, but millions of little fish. Okay. The last 3 days of those cameras was nothing but schoolie stripers going by there coming into that tail race. Everything eats these fish. It's the entire coastal food web. And that's, the best we can do is think about function too. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
That's a good point. And I didn't mention that the Union of Concerned Scientists has identified this dam as being of concern. By 2050, they're expecting another 1.8 feet of sea level rise, and that can impact the functioning of the turbines, but it could also impact the functioning of the fishway. And that point we've raised on multiple occasions. I don't know how much it's being listened to, but
I should make just one more that's maybe depressing, but so I basically, for this climate talk, I got my lecture notes from when I was teaching environmental science classes, and then I looked up a bunch of papers, since then, and it was scary. So the people that study this stuff are getting really worried about it. And it isn't so much so a nonlinear thing. So when you're coming to a threshold, you can't really tell where it is. You can't know for sure where it is with something really complex. When you think about the stock market, it's the same thing. People start piling in, you get this big bubble, goes for years, and then all of a sudden, like in 2008, right? It crashes. Like it's the same sort of thing. Anyway, these people are getting very worried about it. And I've lost my train of thought there.
While you're getting back to that, I think, some of the stuff, and you're gonna be meeting with the select board on Thursday. For me, or for anyone, I think that you're trying to make a compelling case to, and, I'm a fisherman. I understand the benefit of having good fish passage. You don't really have to convince me, but what you said about the economic, select boards or certain people think about, what's the impact of having, why do I care if fish go above the dam? Basically, what is the reasons, ecologically, economically, socially, what are the benefits of that? I don't know all that. You guys, I think, know a lot about that. So having some, definitely talking about that with the select board, I think is really good. For them to have that as well, to have that understanding, not just because well, they used to pass before the dam was there. I mean, we like to think those are good arguments, but they may not be good arguments. And the data, the charts that are in there, I think, showing what is the potential, what could happen. And the other part for me is, we're probably not at that point, and I don't know, we don't need to get into that now, or even the select board is, what would it take to get to that point? You know, there's obviously an economic impact to the owner of the dam, to do that. You know, what would the improvements need to be, to allow better fish passage? That, I don't think, the select board doesn't need to hear that. I don't need to hear that. It is what it is, but can it be improved? What's the method is, obviously, I don't love the way that, they have to go kind of like this. It seems like they should just be able to swim straight up.
Yeah, we didn't get, I mean, the sort of basic fishways are kind of like out here, a ladder type of fish lift or elevator.
Yeah.
And then more and more people are starting to make these nature-like fishways that more resemble a stream.
Oh, sure.
But you do have to frig with most of them, less so with the nature type fishway. And certainly the layout down here lends itself to a nature kind of a fishway probably end up coming up where the tainter gates are over on this side. Kind of angle up through the rocks and all that stuff, but
On the
it's
Topsham
unlikely we
side?
get the dam removed,
You
but
mean on the Topsham side or the?
yeah.
Brunswick?
Yeah, the
Okay,
Thompson.
so where the fishway used to be in that historic.
Yeah, exactly.
There's those two gates that kind of roll up, those are called tainter gates for overflow stuff, and that's sort of, I sort of see from where we do our shad stuff, which is on the rocks on the Brunswick side below the Green Bridge. We probably start somewhere down in there and essentially create a stream that worked its way up at a fairly
Shallow green.
low rise rate up to that Topsham side.
The-
Logical place to.
The dam at the Tanner Gates is 20 feet high, and I did an analysis based on some other reports by, I think it was NOAA that put it out on potential designs for nature-like fishway. And they like a slope of 1 to 2%. And if you went at 2% for a 20-foot riser, you get 1,000 feet. And so if you start down by the Green Bridge and make a curve and go up around the Tanner Gates, you're starting to get pretty close to what that distance is. And it becomes, to me, reasonable to think about something like that. Brookfield is not going to be happy because there'd be more water flowing around that way that they may not be able to capture in the turbulence. So that's just that
Right.
cost benefit analysis.
That actually, you reminded me what I was.
I was hoping I would.
I mean, people often say, but, I just as soon see the dam removed and all the rest of them. And the point's always made, well, is it a green energy and all that? Well, it's less green than you think, number one.
Correct.
And number two, it's just like all these things that we've done so far are not having any effect whatsoever on the CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere at all. So that's another thing that was pretty depressing when I, did the climate lecture. It's like, look at the chart from, the data coming from Hawaii that go back to 1957. If anything, it's accelerating in the last few years. COVID had no effect at all that I could see on it. Supposedly 90 or 8% of economic activity was slowed globally. Had no effect whatsoever on it. So it's like we're blocking the third largest dam. We're basically giving up the ecology of our wonderful coastal system for no good reason, as far as I'm concerned, at all.
So
It's
I
not.
I just wanted to say that I mean there's a lot of things that are in play that we don't even know what about with like the DOT just redid the bridge. I'm pretty sure they were working on fish passage and how it would interplay with the new bridge and all that stuff. So I feel like there's a lot of I know just enough about fish passage to know that it is incredibly complicated. So is it more of are you looking for us just we support fish passage kind of idea, and not any, because there's no, we don't have the technical expertise to say one way or another about anything of how to improve it. So is all what you guys are looking for is just that we support the idea of fish passage?
Yeah, I would add improved fish passage, because technically there is fish patches there, but it's not working well at all. And you're right, supposedly the next 2 years are gonna provide data that allow a much better ability to engineer improved fish passages and alternative fishway analysis that then would be, what do we have? What are our options? So we don't have those yet because they don't have enough data to know exactly what that is. And you're right, it's extremely complicated. I have asked questions about the bridge construction, and they're going to incorporate the new pilings and that kind of thing into their fluid dynamic studies below the dam. But no one has the answer at the moment to what is the best way to move fish, other than the simplest one that John mentioned, which is remove the dam. But even then, with all the monkeying around and blasting that's been done, I'm not quite sure that that is the final answer, because there's probably more you need to know to make it work well.
Probably have to do some site restoration there as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
But speaking to Chris, what you said about the economics, one thing that people ought to know is that where alewife or river herring fisheries have come back, towns are again harvesting, commercial people are harvesting. So that's still a preferred bait for the lobster industry.
I mean, I think that's a good argument, whether that's a slide or something. I don't know if you guys are all attending Thursday night, but I think that's a good thing to talk about with an elected board of select board.
I do have good pictures of that if you want. I can email.
Yeah, I also would. I would try to keep it shorter for the select board
Yeah,
too.
I will.
I think
It was a long
that, I
15
mean, the
minutes.
history stuff is really cool. I enjoyed it all, but you might want to keep it more focused on the thing at hand. I mean, some people may enjoy those pictures, or you can buzz through them quickly. I just keep the attention span and to the focus of the select board. Like I said, I enjoyed it all, but.
And thank you for that. When I did this in Brunswick, the various commissions, it was actually, you guys gave me a lot of time and there were some great questions, but I was told when I went to their council, you got 5 minutes. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And we did it tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very quick and pointed. What's the process? What's the ask? You can almost start with the ask and why it's important that you support this.
Well, they will have a resolution to consider. It's already been done. Mark took what was done in Brunswick and modified it to some extent.
In fact, the resolution was strengthened in Brunswick. Councilman Weems said, we'll take out what word did he remove?
We
support.
We support.
And he said, we're gonna require.
I mean, Beck, I don't know if we want, I know we've got a couple of other things we gotta tackle tonight.
Yeah,
We
we should.
I mean, I'd make a motion if you want one, or someone else can.
Can I ask another piece of
Oh, sure,
clarification? So are you looking for this commission to write a separate
No.
letter?
It's
So
just
to
to
get
support the
behind-
selectmen in improving, in a resolution improving.
Okay.
If you somehow message to the select board that we have had a presentation and we are supportive of a resolution, that would be
So
fantastic.
strictly to encourage them to
Yeah,
put forward
right,
the resolution.
right.
I'll
So,
share
yeah,
one quick little.
So if anybody wants to make a
Um,
motion to do that, I'm sorry, go ahead. Ed, I'm sorry, go
You guys
ahead.
have a motion on the floor.
I know, I haven't made one yet. Go ahead, Ed.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I've been flying eagle nest surveys for quite a few years, and where the fisheries come back up on the Sebasticook, I'm routinely counting over 300 eagles when the herring are up there, trying to move upstream.
Yeah, that's
300.
Pretty cool, yeah, over 300 between Sebasticook and now outlet stream from China Lake. Yeah. So I always, God, I wish a legislator was sitting here with me, because you want people to see what a restored river could look like.
Yeah.
It's just very visceral,
Yeah.
You should catch
so
some geese too.
If,
I was gonna say, but apples and oranges, I've been to the water conference and I've seen all the different dam removal, and it is amazing. But apples and oranges, you can't compare different with the scale of what this is to what was done in that area, except for the Edwards Dam, maybe. But yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems a little, there's so many things to consider.
So yeah, if somebody wants to make a motion to basically support the select board, that'd be great.
The move that the Topsom Conservation Commission encourage the Topsham Select Board to develop a resolution
In support of.
improved fish passage for the Brunswick Topsham Dam.
Fantastic. That's it in a nutshell right there.
I'll second that.
That's fine. Okay. Victor, second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay.
Ready to vote.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, okay.
right.
So, should we send a letter to the select board, Josh, or, what's the best way to communicate with them in such a short notice, basically?
That's very tricky.
You're not gonna be at the meeting Thursday.
No, and typically, but that's not a
Do we
problem.
get it to Mark?
Yes,
Get
typically we'd be
something
getting it tomorrow. I mean, if the Conservation Commission could get me something tomorrow morning, as early as possible, I can get it to Mark, but there's no guarantee. Typically, anything that's going into the memo to the select board is sent the Wednesday before the select board, so that's
Yeah.
last Wednesday, but I can always give it to Mark and ask him if
He could just, either that or just mention it.
Or just mention it.
in his opening comments on the
That's
topic.
what I was gonna suggest. I know our commission, if we miss the memo window, so, yeah, but I was thinking to mention
We can.
that.
Yeah, if you get me something, I can give it to Mark, and then Mark will have that information to give to the select board.
Okay,
However, he.
You're
okay.
sick, but you usually do these things, but I know you're sick, so.
Well, if somebody else wants to handle it, that'd be great. I'm probably gonna be
I
fading
sent
pretty.
an email that said, made a motion and we passed it.
Yeah, and I think
That's fine.
maybe noting that we had a presentation from the individuals that were here this evening and.
Yep. And if there's an opportunity to have a formal letter submitted after this meeting, then we could do that, if there was time to do such a thing.
So,
I think it'd be,
I mean,
it could be like 1 or 2 lines. Like
Yeah.
you suggested.
Just
Well,
some written document.
yeah, and if you send me that email, Shayna, I can, tomorrow morning, like first thing, I'll talk to Mark, and then Mark will let me know if a formal anything would be useful, or if he could input it, because more than an email might not be necessary, or
Okay.
doable, but I'll check with Mark first thing.
Okay,
Send that out.
That's good. Thank you very
much. Okay.
Thank you very much. Great work.
Yeah.
Keep up the art. A lot of work to do in the next 4 years.
American Rivers
It's
contacts.
only one dam.
Yeah, right.
American Rivers contacts.
It's a chain of
Oh,
events here.
Yeah, Andrew Fisk, FISK.
You still have dogs trained for retrieving?
I worked with them through
My brother
the
went to
National
the
Scenic Rivers Designation
Ducks Unlimited,
Program.
thing at
Um,
Water
they're a
Street years ago.
supporter of
And I
that.
think one of your
legislation, so
dogs won
some
the
of those
like
dogs.
retrieving
Yeah,
contest
and-
or
and
something. Very supportive.
Yeah, she was like 11 years old.
And like I
blind
said,
in one
Rogan
eye,
was
and
fan,
she's
like
still
we've met.
walking.
So
So,
at this point, being raised with
I
fish.
miss them, yeah.
Fishermen
Yeah,
Association, and
Yeah, I don't have it.
they are interested.
We don't have
in
labs
knowing
anymore, so.
how real we were.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping we get folks like that, and it really does get to the fishing communities.
Yeah.
Towards them, so
Good to have on there.
they would be great. Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thanks so much.
Just a second.
Okay.
Can I see you for a minute?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Don't be a stranger. You never come and visit us anymore.
I don't, but
Uh-uh.
try to. That might make me grade papers or
Didn't you
something.
do that? No.
Not
so much.
My schedule changed.
okay.
I could have walked out at 6:30 because I told you I was all gonna, but my schedule changed, so I didn't need to.
Oh, you don't need to leave.
Oh.
I knew that would take a while, but I think it was good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Shannon, were you putting an email together?
Yeah.
Oh, probably already done, right? Hit send on it.
I haven't sent it, but I wanna read it before I send it.
Oh, no, I think, I was saying, I assume you probably were already done with it. Writing it as we were listening.
Uh-huh.
All right, we're good. Vic.
Okay, yeah, okay. The next thing on the agenda is a letter of support for LD 29. And I hope everybody's had a chance to look at it. Let's see. I'm going to try sharing my screen, I guess. Share.
Does anybody need to see it, or are you okay to
I've
send
already
it?
seen it. I don't need
We're
it.
okay,
I don't need
Victor.
to see it.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Unless
Well,
Audie needs to see it.
okay. Anyway, I think it's
I think
shared
we
by
all
now.
signed it,
So,
right?
um,
No, this is a different one.
Oh,
That's the NAP thing, the one we all signed.
okay.
Victor, when is the hearing for this?
it's tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. Yeah, I know. The actually, there is some updates. Apparently, a group of rail advocates has requested that the department consider a proposal for running an excursion train on the tracks. From what I understand, the department has given them a month to prepare their proposal. So that will likely delay the actual vote on this, but the hearing is still going on tomorrow. But anyway, and I don't know what the committee will do with that. They could just say, we're gonna, I don't know. I guess they have to actually consider it. So the likelihood is that this is just a delaying tactic because there's no way that a small, lightly funded group can support, 300 plus millions of dollars to restore the rail line. It's just, it's a fantasy. So anyway, I this is I you know it, it's not this is not essential, but it would be helpful. We already have about 100 testimonies already submitted on this bill. The other bill for the Casco Bay has got 450. So, but it's a smaller community here. So anyway, the idea is just, what they're deciding is whether or not they'll allow this rail line to be used for another purpose. Basically, as a potential trail. And they have to do that by statute. Otherwise, it can't be used as a trail. They have to say, yes, you can go ahead and use this corridor for a trail. And that's pretty much all they're doing. They're not saying anything about, what kind of trail or that's really going to be up to the department and the towns. So I'm hoping not to say too much here, is basically. And I
So this is just a letter that says we support the railroad to be turned into a trail,
yeah,
like alternative use.
right, exactly.
I don't know if anyone saw my email
And
from
to,
earlier.
yeah, I was hoping you could
Yeah.
talk about your concerns.
I'm not gonna vote because I own property on it, and I would say I don't want if you guys do vote to put it ahead, I don't want my name on there, and then, not because I'm scared of my name being on there, but I don't think if we're putting it forth. Vic, I guess or all of you, I guess. I always have to continue to look back at what our charge is as far as the Topsham Conservation Commission. And also the natural areas plan that we developed. And I didn't have a chance to review it all again, but if, this is an area that's an unfragmented, it's not unfragmented, I wouldn't say that, but it's a natural area right now in the way that it is with no traffic. And even if there was rail traffic on it, as there used to be, it would be minimal compared to human traffic on it if it became a trail. is that consistent with, you know, the natural areas plan, which our committee wrote, to have a heavily used, whatever vehicles use the trail, whether it's just walking, bikes, ATVs. And I know there's things in our natural areas plan about public access and trails and connectivity and stuff too. So I'm torn as a concept. If I didn't own property along the railroad, I would be torn whether I would support this or not support this for those reasons. So I just won't vote. I'm not gonna not support it. I just won't vote on it, but I don't, that's my thoughts. So, and, you know, obviously I own property on there. It's kind of nice not having a lot of traffic going by, but I wouldn't want it to be a rail line, an active rail line either, going by my properties either. But I don't know that there's a potential for that. Vic probably knows more about that, so. But again, that's why I brought it up. So.
Yeah, my thought on
sounds
that is that
plenty of support for it, Vic. Sounds like.
yeah. My thought on it is that it's going to be it's not going to be heavily used except yeah, thanks. It's not going to be heavily used except possibly from the center of town to Head of Tide Park area in that section, because that's where the population center is. Most people aren't going to walk more than a mile or two, you know, round trip. And there will be some long distance runners I know who'll probably use it. And there's some bicyclists who will definitely use it to get to Bodenham particularly. But I you know, yeah, I agree that it does go through some natural, it goes through some very nice areas that are more or less undisturbed at the moment. So that is a factor. To me, to me, the benefit of using it for any purpose is better than just sort of letting it sit unused. And I think the more people who who kind of connect with, it's another way for people to connect with nature who probably wouldn't otherwise. You know, certainly bicyclists don't, a lot of bicyclists do hike, but they probably don't go seeking out trails in natural areas as much as they as they would on a bicycle. So anyway, I don't know. I can see Chris's points, but and it
There are a
doesn't.
lot of land trust properties. Land trust owns a lot of land out there too, and I know the land trust, you know, whenever they get a piece of property, the first thing they want to do is build a parking lot and build a bunch of trails. So that's my perspective. That doesn't need to be your perspective on it. I don't know, Vic, I haven't spent a lot of time, maybe you've reviewed the natural areas plan lately, you know, from a Topsham Conservation Commission is, you know, what's more important, trails and access or leaving unfragmented blocks unfragmented? Obviously they used to have a rail line going through it, but now there's wildlife going through it. I've walked the whole stretch from all the way from my house all the way to Bodenham. It's not very fun walking on rail lines, by the way. So that's my 2 cents worth, but I don't, you guys should make your own thoughts on it. And
Do we know what the opponents to this bill are going to be arguing?
Well, they're going to be, the arguments have been, there isn't really a good economic argument for the rail, for rail. It's basically, there are no industries that are asking for freight right now, and you know, they haven't since the late 80s, since the mid 80s. So you know, it's not likely to happen. Passenger rail is, you know, the estimates from the RUAC process basically said there might be as many as 240 passenger trips a day to Bangor. They studied the whole corridor up to Bangor. And that's at, you know, in 2040. So and we're talking to Bangor, it's close to $1 billion in work to actually in trail work in order, I mean, rail work in order to get the rail line in condition for passenger rail. So it's, the payback just isn't there. You know, the economic activity, even if you just take away the initial costs, the activity is tiny compared to what it would be for bicycle or pedestrian use. Just because people, you know, long distance trails attract people from farther away, and you know, they end up spending nights in places and they have to get food. And so, you know, the fact that this trail goes through not just, you know, our town, but other towns, and also, you know, all the way up to Augusta, Hollowell, et cetera, where there are places to eat and sleep and stuff like that. Those are, you know, likely to be the places that get increased economic activity. And it's in the millions. I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but so it's a substantial increase in activity, in economic activity, to having a trail. And the other thing too is that for transportation purposes, if we just look at transportation, the highways aren't crowded. You know, 295, you know, barely has a, you know, a slowdown at any time of the year. Maybe in the, you know, the worst of the summer. And so a bus service is, you know, the capital expense for a bus service is, you know, a few $1,000,000. And the cost to operate it, or the, what do you want to call it? Yeah, the cost to operate it are, you know, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, versus the train, which is a $10 million a year subsidy, or, you know, cost to actually operate the trains. So, so it's, you know, it's just hard to justify. Plus, the buses are much more flexible, you know, I mean, you can change where the stops are, you can, you know, anyway, so, so buses are,
I think I just,
yeah,
when you guys vote, I would say, keep Topsham in mind. We represent the town of Topsham.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. The other thing that you made a good point. I mean, so this is an old rail line, I guess. I agree with you, Vic. I don't think it makes sense to put the 240 trips or people going back and forth. That, you know, with all the improvements, especially near my house with that large bridge that would need to be replaced, that significant expense. Obviously, it could be much less of a bridge for pedestrian passage. Still pretty wide and deep. But what else could the rail line become? I mean, you mentioned the whole, the excursion, and that sounds pretty nice, actually. But I mean, could it become a road? You know, I mean, obviously, if the decision was between a recreational trail and a major road, I'd be voting for the recreational trail and not the road. But is that, I don't know what the possibilities are for that easement, Vic.
yeah. I don't think the department, I assume it could be a road, but I don't think the department is actually looking at that at all. This corridor is part of their active transportation plan. So they would be looking to try to use it you know, to fit into that plan. So cars are not part of that. And I don't think the demand, again, the cost for building a road is substantially more than the trail. And so,
Yeah.
you know, so it would, you know, be relatively expensive. And then what's the demand? You know, we already have roads going to Bodenham, and so you know, we got a highway and you know, Route 24 and stuff like that. So I don't know that it's
Yeah. Yeah.
I think prior to this conversation, my misgiving was not knowing enough about the issue and knowing about those alternative uses. I think, you know, in concept, I can definitely get behind a trail that connects this area with Gardner, and I like the linearity of it. I mean, Topsom has a lot of trails, but none really have this feature, which is that, you know, really straight shot that provides a different type of recreational use than, you know, the mountain bike trails at the transfer station and such. So I think this is a really valuable bill to get behind. I do have to wonder about sort of the practical implications of us throwing support with testimony, with written testimony, but it certainly can't hurt to add it to the stack of whatever 100 others, Victor, that you said are already being submitted. This would just be written testimony though, correct? It's not going to be presented?
no, Yeah, no, I'm not planning on doing it. And we don't want to, the department, from what we've heard, is basically they don't want to take up the, the committee's time with a lot of testimony. So there's 4 or 5 people testifying on each bill, and that's it. So, and there's already 5 people testifying
Yeah.
on this, so,
I'm comfortable with my name being on this.
okay. Did we lose Audie?
Looks like we lost Odd.
I think
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, well.
We are kind of in a second. And she dropped off after the presentation.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
There she is.
Well, you have a majority back. Yeah, great.
Okay.
I mean,
Oh,
we can
Well,
take-
I haven't heard from
we can
Shayna,
take
I'm sorry.
Audie's name off of- I don't, I mean, I think that it falls in line with our desire to protect natural areas, connectivity and open space. So I don't have any problem having my name on it.
Okay. Okay, then I guess, if that's okay, actually, I guess we should do I don't know if we need to do a formal vote, but,
If we say the following members of the Conservation Commission would like to express our
Yes.
support.
Yeah.
Sure.
If
That sounds
I
great.
mean, you can check, you can email Audie too, see if she wants her name on there, just because she wasn't in the meeting. She might support it too, so.
Yeah. Okay,
I think you should just send it as this unless you hear from Audie.
okay. That sounds great. I'll do that.
Okay with you? Yep.
Okay, let's, move on. Let me,
Abstain, I have a conflict of interest, you can put it that way.
Yep.
Even though,
Okay.
even if I didn't own property, I don't know if I would have voted or not, but
Okay.
that was my primary reason. Conflict of interest.
yeah. And then,
I have a hard stop at 7.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for
It
joining
was
us.
nice to meet you.
Come back.
Come to a
If I
future
can.
meeting.
We're gonna try.
You're always welcome.
Our April meeting is gonna be a presentation about pollinators at the town library.
Know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Feels good. It really does.
I thought I had this
Everyone?
open.
Yeah, should we try to?
Yes.
Can we try to next item and then maybe that's it for tonight, since it is 7:01?
Yeah, or maybe we should
I
just,
have to give you about
Okay.
the Bowden student project.
That's fine.
yeah, I think maybe we should
didn't-
skip the
next
next
item.
agenda item and just, there's
Is-
one
is it
property
not-
that,
Oh, is it not?
I'm sorry,
Go
what?
ahead, Vic.
There's
I just
one.
want to make
one-
sure it wasn't time critical.
There was one, a newly acquired property that we might want to consider, looking at some point, but, it's not urgent and we can do it at another meeting. So yeah, I guess, we should move on to the updates.
Can I go about the
Yes,
natural
please.
areas plan update? Eileen and I met to go over the student plan for what they were gonna work on. Victor, I just need to check with you to see if the energy committee is who has the vulnerability assessment.
Yes,
The- Okay,
and I can get you the printed version, but you probably want the actual data, right?
who should we contact?
Is that,
I think Sky,
I think I have that. I
or
might
yeah,
have
maybe Josh.
that.
They were
Yeah.
supposed to,
Is that,
Environmental was supposed to give us the data from their maps, so.
Is that one of the appendices in the proposed climate action plan?
Yeah, there's an appendices for the vulnerability assessment, and it includes a number of maps, and that GIS data from those maps should be it's supposed to reside with us, so.
I don't know about GIS data, but I have the actual, I have the document.
Okay.
Okay,
As far as thinking about beginning with the data that'll go into the matrix for us to choose our priority or review our priority areas. The beginning with habitat data categories are a little different now than they were then. And I just wanted to make sure that people were okay with us sort of populating with the current data that's in the beginning with habitat
Yes.
plan.
Yes.
yeah.
The students are working on this as a collective project. Some might have individual projects that are like a spin-off of it, but some of them would like to come to our May 5th meeting to present what they've been working on. If that's okay with everybody to have them on an agenda.
Yes.
Yes,
And then, the other thing is so the something that hadn't been done previously, but is being proposed to do this time is a scenic assessment, which includes like priority areas that might have a particular scenic value in the community. And the students are wondering if they should limit these to only publicly owned parcels, or if they could consider something like, the Merry Meeting Bay view off of Route 24 as like is it okay to show scenic resources that are on private lands, or like the Hunter Farm view of the river, something like that. So they wanted some public-private thoughts on us identifying a privately owned area as a priority natural area. And I'm thinking, like, since we include private parcels in the original one, I mean, it's not like we limited the priority natural areas in the town to only be those that were owned by the town,
Yeah,
because then there would be like
yeah.
two.
That was even mentioned, the Hunter Farm was mentioned as a special place, I think, in our
Yeah.
2010 plan.
yes.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
the view is the view. It
Right.
doesn't matter whether it's public or private land, you can talk that it's a scenic view. And the landowner might be concerned that, that means something is gonna be zoned on my property, but I don't think, I would say any scenic view is what I would say.
I mean, I'm sure they're not gonna be, it's not gonna be surprises, right? They're the ones
No.
that we all like slow down and look at whenever we're trying.
I think they can identify them and we can decide if we wanna include them in the.
Yeah, okay.
Is that,
That
I
makes
think it's
sense.
fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we can always decide if we wanna cut it out at the end, but they should at least do it. Let's let them do it.
Okay.
Beck, I assume you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Great. So they're working on it. They started downloading data and getting data from wherever they could find. They met with Judy Colby George, who was the original person who worked on the plan, and their goal is to gather together as much as they can, so that if we did have money to hire a consultant, they would have like the package to give to them with a lot of the legwork already completed.
Awesome. That's great.
Cool. Yeah. Good work.
Hopefully they're enjoying themselves too.
They are, they're a small, really excited group. They're thinking about accessibility to open space also, like, to all demographics in the town, so that's something that they're putting into this as
It's a
well.
great applied project for them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Really great.
Other updates?
Brunswick Tree Committee, the next meeting is March 18th. Again, I have it on my calendar. If this time I don't think I can make it, I'll remind you guys, just so if you guys want
One
to
of us
attend.
could go.
7 o'clock at Brunswick Town Hall. It's always a night that my daughter comes over for dinner. She's not living at home anymore, so I always try to be there because I only see her once a week. So
Yeah.
but I'll try to break out for this one.
Okay. The climate action plan is sort of finalized, and we've taken public comments and made changes, I think. And it's being presented to the select board. Oh boy, I forget. It's next week. Oh, no, it's this
Um,
week. I'm sorry,
the
it's this
select
week.
board would-
Yeah, it's this
Yeah.
week. Actually, we're doing a presentation on Thursday. Boy, I've been out of it. So yeah, we're doing a presentation on Thursday on it to the select board. And they will have to make a decision as to whether it'll go on the warrant for town meeting and then it'll, be presented, or it'll be on the warrant for town meeting if that's successful. We'll probably be doing, the Energy Committee will be doing some outreach on the plan, a little later in the spring as when we know what the status is. So, and we're still on for the talk at the library, I understand. So, I guess we'll
Is that
see
gonna be our
everybody.
meeting?
Yep.
We're not having a meeting on the 7th, right? Is that reflected
Right.
on the
Um,
webpage? So the guy that was here doesn't show up, or?
It still shows a meeting.
Yeah,
as of
Um,
this
Oh, okay.
afternoon.
it does.
Well, when I email Irene the minutes from our last meeting, I will let her know that will be our
that's the
Conservation
meeting.
Commission meeting.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
And then you can CC me on that too.
Yep.
Between the two of us, we'll.
And it will be on it should be in the library's ad in the crier as like upcoming events.
Okay.
Did you have something you wanted to?
I have a
Yeah.
quick question. Where is the proposal?
Yeah.
Where is it now?
I use it to satisfy it with, so, can't, not that, if it's not back, but I'm never gonna read it, so.
It goes to.
Josh, so Josh, we signed our like little.
Oh,
or
the proposal.
Yes, the proposal. So the next step, now that everyone has signed it, actually, thank you for bringing that up, because I was gonna say, the next step is so just Sky will just come and talk about it. But then our next meeting is gonna be at the library, so then that would mean that Sky wouldn't come until May. So then that just might be what we. So I can schedule Sky to come in and talk about.
Well, it's good because she'll be here for the presentation of the Bowdoin students.
Yeah.
that'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. that's all.
so Sky will be here in May.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Yes, thank you.
Motion to adjourn? This is
I'll make a
anything else?
motion. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
All in favor?
Yay.
Hope you feel better.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Are you testifying tomorrow?
No, I'm not gonna do that, no. I could do it through Zoom, but it's just not, we have enough people. And actually the trouble, the issue is really a member of the committee from Gardner that is dead set against this trail. So we're kind of stacking the deck to people who are further up north on the trail to testify in person. So, at any rate.
Don't worry, I won't be there speaking in opposition.
Oh. Okay,
See you back.
see ya.
All right.
Night.
Yep,
Good
thank you
night.
all. Yep, goodbye.
Feel better.
It was nice driving into our
Yeah.
meeting tonight and having it